Am I audible? Yeah. So yeah, now the focus is on speech technology. Yeah. So let us try to understand this notion of a speech. What is a speech?
Sounds that we create to communicate with people.
Some expressions. Okay. So there are some kind of utterances, right? So yeah. So speech, I think we can say that some form of utterances, meaningful expressions. Right? Yeah. Now, so I can say, yeah, looking outside, I can say today is the sun. So it's an utterance, right? It is a speech. Could I say that it is a speech? Yeah. I can say that it is a speech. It is an utterance. It is meaningful. Now, I can also consider this kind of utterances. Today is a sunny. I can say that I assert that today is a sunny. So it's not that it's changing the meaning of the expression, but the prefix is added, like I assert that today is a sunny. Or I can say something like this. I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. So I will take you to Taj Mahal. Now you are the prefix. I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. Or I could say. Yeah, this one. I assert that Jolie cheated on the exam. Okay. So Jolie cheated on the exam. I assert that Jolie cheated on the exam. Or more examples would be this one. I appoint you as the caretaker of my apartment. That's another expression, meaningful expression. I appoint you as the caretaker of my apartment. Or I could say that I request you to be the caretaker of my apartment. Now another example would be this. I implore you that you don't leave me. I implore you that you just don't leave me. So another expression. Yeah, so again, I assert that she or he left me. Now, this one, she or he left me. I assert that she or he has left me. Do you find any difference? Though meaning-wise it doesn't add anything. It might not add much. Today is sunny. Some kind of emphasis is here. That's one thing. Anything else? Between the sentence, I assert that today is sunny. So, as it was pointed out, some emphasis is added when we put the prefix I assert. Anything else? What could be the possible difference between today is sunny, I assert that today is sunny.
You're not just saying, you're saying that you're saying.
I believe that today.
I believe, yeah. So that goes with both the sentences. I assert that today is sunny. I believe. So even without adding the prefix, I assert. When I utter that today is sunny, I believe it.
I think the first one is stating something, the second one was stating that is.
Okay. Is it?
So
It can be may or may not be something.
So like suppose if it doesn't have to be merely that first one is today is sunny. Of course, I am stating sunny. Then I assert that today is sunny. Now,
I vote for
is it merely stating that I have stated this? Yeah.
Kind of prediction.
through watching. I vote that I have seen or something.
Okay. With confirmation. Okay.
you're also doing something. You're also doing something. You're asserting.
Yes.
It's kind of predicting kind of thing. Even though we are,
So today is sunny. There is no prediction as such.
I mean, like 90% sure that it will be something.
No, it's like for sure. I assert that it's something.
Something that I'm owning a ownership. No?
Okay.
I am authoritarian and having a ownership on what I am saying.
Okay.
What I declare is something a law. With that kind of intention.
Yeah, that kind of intention could be there. So could I say that so today is a Sunday. Now, when I have the utterance, I assert that today is Sunday. Through that expression, I am also doing something. So I assert there is no way that that particular action could be performed in any other manner. So today is Sunday. I assert that today is Sunday. Now, of course, today's Sunday is a statement. When I say that I assert that today is a Sunday, I am also performing a particular action, and that action is an assertion, making an assertion. Could we say that? I mean, or if we take this one, I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. I will take you to Taj Mahal. So the moment I add, I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. By adding that particular prefix, I am also performing a particular action of promising, making a promise. Could we say that? In some sense, right? So, now, other example would be like, I appoint you as the caretaker of my apartment. Now, in a given situation, I cannot appoint anyone as the caretaker for Rishit's apartment. That I cannot do. So, that particular action of assertion, is possible when he owns the apartment, not that I can. So, when I make this kind of utterances, in some sense, yes, I can say that I am also performing a particular action of making an assertion by expressing that. So the sentence that you are the take care of my apartment is different from the sentence that I assert that or I appoint you as the caretaker of my apartment. So what is it happening there? So it's something like this. Some kind of a speech act is being performed. So I promise that I will do such and such thing. Then when I say this, I am also performing a particular action of making a promise. There is no other way that action could be performed. So, I mean, other examples could be like, in Christianity, in churches, they say that I baptize. So that is like a speech act by expression, but through that expression, one who uttered that particular expression is also performing a particular action of speech act. So does it make sense? So yeah. So speech acts are those acts that one could perform by uttering that she is doing so.
So how about sentence? I think that would be rain tomorrow. That is not a speech act. Think, the verb is think.
Could that be a speech act?
No,
Why?
because you are stating, you are reporting an action that you're doing, the action there is taking. Is like meaning I am walking. The action there is walking. The sentence itself, the speaking of that itself is not the action. You are speaking of the action. The action there is that you're thinking. It might be.
Okay. Okay. So it is not a report of. Couldn't I say that it is not the report of what you are performing?
It is, when you say, I am thinking that it will rain, it is a report of an action. But that is not the action itself. The action sets it. But when you say, I promise, that itself the action of promising. Or when in a wedding you say that I do,
Oh.
that self is the action, that speaks itself is the action.
Yeah. So it's like I anoint you as a king. Something like that. So I mean that particular action could express, I mean that's the only way that the action could get exemplified. Like, the very act of anointing. So yeah, I think that it will rain. May not be a speech act, but I need to be careful there. So yeah, so clearly, I mean, to understand the idea of a speech act, we can consider these examples.
But would you say it's predicting?
Predicable.
Predicting. So when
Predict.
you say,
So then I predict that.
if I say, I think it might rain, can you say it's an action of prediction?
So suppose if I say I predict that it might rain. Now, with that expression, I am also performing that speech act. Could I say that?
It won't be right for, I was thinking it might rain today.
Which one?
If I say I was thinking it might rain today, he said, is it the same as I predict it will rain today?
So what would be the issue there?
I'm asking, like, it can be, right?
Prediction and the thinking.
So when I say I'm thinking it will rain today, it is a prediction, right? It is.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, when I say it will, just the expression it will rain.
no, I'm saying I'm
I
thinking
think it will rain.
I think it will rain today. So could that be like a speech at the act of predicting?
Okay, so bit doubtful then whether I think. But couldn't I say that I think it will rain? Now, it is unlike this because in the case of I promise, the very act of promise making is like it comes out as an action through that expression. But in the case of I think, yeah, I think I need to check that. Okay, so now, so we can think of something called speech acts. Clearly, speech acts are there. So another way to explain what is a speech act is the utterance of a sentence and the performance of the action mentioned in the sentence come together. So utterance of the sentence, so the utterance, and the performance also, in some sense, they come together. Right? Or, the other way to explain, say the same thing, is that the speaker performs the action of asserting something by saying that she's doing so. So, now I will take you to the Taj Mahal. Is different from I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. Right? Although and every assertive statements could come with a prefix. So Taj Mahal is made of white marble. I can say I assert that Taj Mahal is made of white marble. So there is speech, and one could have a kind of action called speech acts. Does it make sense? Is it okay? Is it sensible? Okay. Now, so some more things about speech act. Now, mostly these speech acts are expressed in the performative sentences. So they are first person present tense kind of sentences. And it describes its speaker as a performing a speech act. So I assert that Jolie cheated on the exam. So it comes in they are performative sentences in first person sentence form. That's one. Now, one point that we can consider is this. So there are many speech acts that use the performatives. So I can just plainly say that today is sunny. I don't have to use the prefix. I assert that today is a sunny. So many sentences do not use speech acts. The other thing is there are many performatives without intending a speech act. So I can have a performative sentence, or I can perform a speech act without intending what is mentioned in the speech act expression. So, like I promised that I will take you to Taj Mahal. I can perform this speech act without intending to keep the promise. So I can say that I assert such and so is the case. Now, if whatever is expressed in the normal as a content in the normal expression might not be true, but still I can make the assertion. Okay. So yeah, so there are many performatives without intending the speech act. I don't invent that particular speech act, but I make that particular performative. It's possible. So speakers performatives without intending to perform the speech act. Now, another distinction that we need to keep it in our mind, that we consider is distinction between illocutionary act and locutionary act. So speech act, then performatives, and then illocutionary act and locutionary act. Now, locutionary act is the literal expression, what the expression literally stands for. Illocutionary act is implied meaning of the expression. So, for example, consider this particular expression in the form of a question. Do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? Now, the illocutionary act is something, could be this one. Please, I will talk to you. Now, the locutionary act is a question, actually. Hope that makes sense. So now we can use illocutionary act and speech act synonymously. So now from this further distinction. So a distinction between illocutionary force and illocutionary content. Illocutionary force and illocutionary content. Now, illocutionary content is what the speaker says. So the content of the expression. I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. Now, illocutionary content is this. Me taking somebody to Taj Mahal. So that's a content. Or I assert that today is a sun. Now, the illocutionary content is this. Today is the sun. Now, what we could do is the content of what the speaker says is to be distinguished from the force that the speaker has on what she says. So here we have something called illocutionary force. So we can clearly think about the content, illocutionary content. Now, clearly we can also think of illocutionary force of the expression. Now, force has to be distinguished from the content. So clearly they can be distinguished. Now, the force of the speech or utterance is also an aspect of the illocutionary act of speech. Now, I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. Now, the force of this particular expression is one thing, and the content or the illocutional content of that particular expression is another thing. Now when we consider the entire expression, we cannot ignore this illocutional force. So now the mere content of the speech act is the proposition of what the expression really says. That's correct, yeah. Now, the illocutionary force of the speech is the, we would say that is the achievement aspect that the speaker has on the listener by having a illocutionary act. So when I say that I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. So there is an illocutionary force, a particular point to that particular illocutionary force, and it is like making a promise. So now that illocutionary force could also be considered as an achievement aspect, yeah, and clearly it has to be distinguished from the illocutionary content. So yes, so now we started off with this speech. What's the speech? Speech is nothing but some expressions or utterances by some speakers. There's something on what is, there's something on speech act. Speech acts are those acts that one could perform by uttering that she is doing so. Any of these examples can be considered. So I promise that I will take Taj Mahal. It's an expression. It is also a speech act. Performing a particular action when making that particular expression. Now, from now always, most of speech acts are expressed in the first person performing. They are the performing sentences. Occurs in the first person present tense. Then we have this distinction of the illocutionary act and the locutionary act. So the focus is on illocutionary act. So now if we have the illocutionary act, we can make the distinction between illocutionary force and the illocutionary content of that particular illocutionary act. And sensibly we can distinguish it. The content is different from the force. Now, further, some of the features of the illocutionary force. Now, illocutionary, so one of the features of illocutionary force is the illocutionary point. So, now each illocutionary act has a specific objective. So, for example, I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. The illocutionary point of this particular sentence would be different from other illocutionary, other speech acts. So each illocutionary act has specific objectives. When I make a promise, it has a specific objective. When I make a request, it has a specific objective. Right? So similarly, assertion, imploring, all this, I guess, apologize, all of them. So now there is something called degree of the strength of the illocutionary point. So different illocutionary acts can have the same illocutionary point, but different strength. So what would be an example here? Yeah. So for example, like suppose if I were to say that I request you to not to do that. So someone being requested of to not to do certain things. Now, for example, if somebody visits my office very often, then I can say that I request you to not to come to my office often. Something like that. Now, the strength will be different when I say that I implore you that you don't come to my office. right? That strength is different. So, in some sense, the content is more or less same, but the force is different. So degree of strength of the illocution form can be different speech acts. Now the condition. So there is a, now for each illocutionary act or speech act, there is a illocutionary content, which is a proposition, which could be a proposition. Now that that somehow whatever is presented in the content should satisfy or should be consistent with the speech act. So, so to my son, if I were to say that, I promise you that I will take you to Taj Mahal, it is possible, still possible. But if I were to say that I promise you that I will take you to moon, no, that content-wise it doesn't satisfy that force. So that's so there is content-specific propositional content that should satisfy the illocutionary force. Now, sincerity condition. So this may be more useful for the current purpose. So now the psychological state that a speaker should have at the time of the speech. So now it is when I say that I promise that I will take you to Taj Mahal. Now some psychological state that I should be in the sense. If I mean, while I am making the promise, if the sincerity condition is satisfied only when I intend to keep the promise. Okay. So, sincerity condition. So that maybe one doesn't have to use the psychological state, but I mean, to explain in an easier way. But we could say that that's a particular psychological state when I make a promise that has to be there. So that is like a sincerity condition. So suppose if I make a promise and if I don't intend to keep that, then the psychological state is different. What is required for the promise making. Or, for example, I'm apologizing for something to some other person, then I apologize that this happened and it will never happen. And if the psychological state is that if it doesn't represent any apology or that kind of feeling from my side, then yeah. Sincerity conditions, it is not satisfied. So this is another feature of the illocution force. Now the degree of the strength of the sincerity conditions.
All speech acts need to have the sincerity condition to be satisfactory.
So, I mean, there could be different kinds of speech acts.
Yeah.
Now that we need to see. I mean, and with regard to all the speech acts, yeah. But even otherwise, also I can say that there is a psychological state.
There is, asking like, should there be the sincerity, should the psychological state be sincere in order for the police teacher to something like that, right?
No. So it's like you are making the speech act, but you don't intend to
Yeah.
be, you are not in that, your expression is not consistent with the expected psychological state, something like that.
Obviously, you can act with conscious, with awareness, but without any intent. Say that. I can not, like the intentionality can be completely absent, but I can still do it with consciousness and awareness.
Intentionality is completely absent, but
Is it possible? There's no intentionality. I
no,
don't intend to do it.
intention is there, like, but
Intention, not intentionality, intention.
intention is there, but I am not. I'm intending something else. I'm making a promise,
Yeah.
but
Not to make, not to. So it's like I cannot like push this chair with the intention of pulling it. If I'm pushing it, I have to have the intention of pushing it. But I can make promises without having the intention of keeping.
keep.
I'm not keeping it, like breaking it. So it's like possible in speech.
Okay.
You can. I'm asking.
So yeah, it's that performative I can have.
But
so
like that's what like also
Is it
performance.
actually a speech act? That's what.
It is a speech act, right?
Yeah.
Like whether I intend to keep the promise or not.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I promise that I will do this for you. It's a speech act. With or without my intention, like to keep it like.
So promise making is
But there is intention of acting.
it's an intentional act.
The intention of acting is still there. It's just that the intention is something else.
So promise making itself, I mean, I wouldn't be able to make an unconscious promise. I mean,
But I can unconsciously.
not unconscious, it's like unaware. I mean, I made that promise, but I wasn't really aware of that promise making. I wouldn't be able to say that. So something is intended consciously, but
It need not be that act itself, right? Like for example, this thing, talak. So if you say talak 3 times, talak, you're divorced. But if somebody can just say it without even knowing the language, but you still, like in that particular frame, you are to perform that action.
Okay. So, okay, actually, is the person making a speech act or he's making a speech act. But not having the awareness. So, maybe the sincerity condition is
Yes, sincerity condition is not
satisfied.
So, do we give some quantitative figures for this features? Some percentage or something like some weights do we give?
I don't know, like what is it?
Suppose if I have a set of sentences and if these are the features, so we use some values for this.
Did you want to?
Then maybe some sort of analysis, some machine learning model, some speech learning model.
So if that is useful, then we can do that.
Isn't it?
I haven't.
Because we want, these are all very good features. So, so if I have sentences like this, which is coming on internet, in Twitter or something, so based on this I can understand
What is the objective?
huh? Objective is just to find out the sincerity of whatever they are saying, or whether it is hard.
Social media, there is no sincerity.
No, it is coming. You see, some statements are coming. Let's say RSS feeds and all those things. We are getting a lot of unstructured data because this is coming out. So based on this, can we find out if there is some meaning in that? Are they?
No, there are models for emotion detection.
No, that is there. But since I saw that this is something new to me. Things like this illocutionary point, content conditions, sincerity conditions. Sincerity conditions, we don't measure it in our language classification.
If you want to build a model with bigger you can form a.
No, correct, but what is the weightage we can give? Maybe 4, 5.
No, that depends. Once again, like that depends. Like what, I mean, if you want to build a
Okay,
model.
maybe if you want, you can.
No, no, it's okay. We can speak of it, right?
Yeah.
You can.
Because if you give some weightages, there, no, maybe we can find out the strength of sincerity conditions. So the automatically, if some weightages could be given based on the selective attention mechanism of those words, so the machine itself will find out whether what is the
especially
what is the force in that sentence.
No, definitely right. When you talk about attention-based models, right, the attention-based model will pick it up explicitly because the word itself, right, seeks what is the context from it comes from basically. So like that, I mean, in the second layer you will have attention vectors, right. So if you want to model the sincerity or even like the specific proportional content, you can use attention-based networks where the content itself, I mean, whatever you're looking for, will come as part of a probabilistic way. Like either you're looking for like what specific sincerity it is doing, what specific degree of strength it is going to do. All that can come out as a whatever. I mean, if you want to be a probabilistic, you can use a softmax. But I mean, you don't need a label for this. It can come explicitly with the machine.
Maybe you conduct some focus meetings and you ask people to give their opinion on something. It could be a product or something, and they all give. So it is let's say it is not controversial. So they give their opinion on that. So based on these features, so
You can.
Just to note that sincerity detection is essentially a polygraph, which has been tried and failed for a long time.
So mostly it is not possible to, yeah, it won't be possible to, yeah. So yeah, now, yeah, so these are the features of illocutionary force. So there is illocutionary content and illocutionary force. And yeah, the content needs to be distinguished from the force. So yeah, now using this just trying to connect it with the collection of the speech background of this stuff. Maybe I'm not right, but yeah, some material for discussions. So now, so I could say, speech act is context determined, and the features of illocution force are also determined with the context of illocution. So I think very trivial point. So the illocutionary force of an expression is closely connected with the speaker when she utters that particular utterance in a particular context. So it is very contextual. It's not really new point. And again, similar point putting it in any features of illocutionary force of a speech act that is contextual wholly belong to the speakers of that context. So that's it. Now, if you look at any of these, it is closely associated with the person who performs the speech act, whether it is illocution point, especially the sincerity condition, and the degree of the sincerity conditions. So all of these clearly belong to the speaker. Now, it is possible for the illocutionary content of a speech act to remain the same across different contexts of it. So now, so the content is a proposition, and it is quite possible. I'm saying that it will remain, its meaning would remain same across the context, but it's still possible that the content could remain same in different contexts. But however, it is highly improbable for the illocution forms of a speaker's illocutionary act to remain the same across the context. So, I mean, even if it is the same speaker. So the illocution force is strongly, associated with the speaker. It clearly belongs to that speaker who utters that particular speech in that particular context. Now, in a different context, it is quite possible that the same illocution force might not remain the same, even if the expressions are the same. So, like, what example? Maybe you can think of examples. Yeah. So maybe I promise that I will take you to the Taj Mahal. Now here, which one will be yours? So for example, I apologize. So I committed some mistake and I apologize. So just after committing the mistake, when I apologize, the intensity of that particular illocution force could be more. I would feel regret even afterwards, many years, but the intensity could be less, even if I were to make the same expression. I apologize for what I have, so something like that. So even if it is the same illocutionary speech act, or even if it is the same with the same content, even if it is the same speaker, it can vary in across context. So now, and we are just trying for this, whether it is right or wrong. Now, so question would be this: in the scenario of a speech processing, what might ground the ethical concerns? For example, privacy and issues. That's the easiest one we can think of. So, easiest in the sense to indicate the problem. So when a set of speech data is collected from a speaker, what is it mean? So, is it the illocution force of a speech act or the illocution content of the speech act? So speech, what I have in my mind is like using the recording, the collecting the speech. So is it merely the content that makes the privacy related issues, gives rise to the privacy related issues? So, is it merely the content? So privacy related issues might come maybe with the, together with the illocution of the content, the illocution of the illocution force. So Now, the ethical concern is to detach the illocutionary content from the illocutionary force. Is it possible to detach the illocutionary content from the illocutionary force? So what we regard as a speech data contains not merely the illocutionary content of the speech data. If it is some utterance by some speaker, so it is not merely the content that is being corrected, but it is the force. So, that's one point that we can think of.
Illocutionary force and content are together. Together. How to handle them separately as far as maintaining secrecy is concerned?
How to handle them separately?
As far as maintaining secrecy between them.
Yeah. So, yes. Even prior to, yes. Trying to say something. You're trying to say something?
So now there's like two things which I'm not thinking here of, like the illocutionary force is then a force between two persons. So Newton's first law, when there's this force, there's also the opposite force. So the receiver somehow reacts to that force. So it's an interaction, and through this if we observe an illocutionary force, so then we learn something about both the speaker and the receiver. So if we have the content only, so if we are unable to identify the force, then we don't learn anything about the receiver. We learn something only about the speaker. That would be my first kind of thought. The other thing which I on the previous slide was thinking that what if the receiver of this illocutionary this promise is a computer? So if I promise that I take you to the Taj Mahal, I promise. Is that a meaningful interaction? My first feeling is that there's no skin in the game. So what does this care? The also doesn't care. It's meaningful interaction only if there's skin games. Let's say that I promise you that I'll charge you in 2 hours. Then the phone says, okay, yes, then I can use a bit more battery right now. That there's some skin in the game. So I think interesting that when taking that computer example, I realized that it's a lot about the receiver as well. It's not only the speaker who is acting here somehow. Yes, needs to be a receiver for this to make sense.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not just one speaker is making an utterance or speech act in isolation. Yes. The speaker also has to be present. Yes. So as a data with content alone, one cannot do anything. That's another issue. So what I was trying to point out is what gives rise to this privacy issue. It is mostly connected with the force and the content.
But like you said, there is no force, right?
Force in the sense?
There is no force.
So this illocutionary force is absent in that that case, right? There is
In
no. Ah,
computer,
yes,
computer case.
yes.
The other extreme is like, what if the speech act is performed by a computer? The speaker itself is.
I think there is force in that sense. It's like this moral patient thing.
Yeah.
Like, whether you intended or not, if you have harmed me, then there is a moral violation. But you cannot morally violate a phone or a computer. So I think it's like, if a computer promises me something, there is illocutionary force. But if I promise something to the computer, I don't think there is
Any
force. Yeah.
So it's nearly unattached and without any, none of the illocutionary force, features of force is not satisfied. Would that be the case?
Also, I think that if there is skin in the game, so if the computer actually suffers, so for example now the battery runs out, that is a consequence. And then
so there needs to be a consequence for the computer to be able to for there to be a force. Of course, it also needs to have sufficient capability to consider the options.
Yes. As a receiver, certain conditions has to be satisfied. Something like that.
Exactly. But then also, if a computer promises something, that kind of then goes very deep, quickly into the consciousness questions.
Yes.
Is it consciousness of the meaning of a promise? And then we are in deep waters.
yeah. Something similar to what some of them are. Yes. Yes, like the receivers, maybe right now.
Yeah, but there's one more thing. So of course, like we can design the computer to use promises as a kind of to emphasize something more. I promise this is true. It's really certain that it is true. So it's kind of a tool in communication you can use, even though it doesn't really understand the meaning. So it doesn't have the consciousness of meaning. It's just using it as a communicative tool.
Oh, the promise making would stand for something similar to that. Yeah. So my aim was very minimal there. Like, these kind of discussions could be added to this and see where we reach. Okay. So, yeah, at least I think we can make this distinction, like the ethics concerning the illocution force and ethics concerning the illocution and in a philosophical sense I can talk about it, but how much that will be useful to apply in any of these cases, I'm not sure. So, yeah.
So, would consent on when we are studying program or something, when we are giving consent about the data, so that illocutionary, what kind of
Okay.
did I make sense?
So it's like, you can say. So, so when we install maybe some app and give consent, right? Now, is it an illocutionary act or speech act? A consent.
Yeah. Consent probably, yeah. Some sort of
speech act.
force there as well.
Yes. Oh, okay. Then in that case, but you are giving consent to, not to the computer inside.
That's what. So now, if we accept that the computer or the system, the AI system, has some level of consciousness, it can be said as like the system just promised, but it is not actually the system that is making the promise, right? Like, we will not violate your privacy, and oh, the phone told me that, promised me that the phone will not. But it's actually not the phone that is violating the privacy. I mean, that's making the promise. Though, like, it looks like either the phone is telling you, I promise, but it's not the phone that is. In fact, it is not even a person. It is not even. It's a shared sort of responsibility to keep the promise. So, but there is a illocutionary force because I am receiving it as I understand it as a promise, and I am trusting it on the promise. But yeah, it's not coming from one agent at least, one speaker at least.
But does it make a difference, like from the user point of view? They probably treat the phone like as it were a human, and they kind of think that it's this phone that is making the promise. Does it make a difference who is making the promise? So like from the user point of view.
Yeah, it doesn't matter as long as the promise is kept, but the moment the promise is violated,
yeah.
Now you want to know who made me the promise, who did not keep the promise. So,
yeah. So different kinds or types of receivers are, speaker and receiver. One could think of in that way. Maybe. When I consent, I'm not consenting to merely to a computer, but maybe a larger group. So still could be a illocutionary act. Now, yes, so some more points. So now maybe there is something distinct about speech data. To make that claim, speech data has to be studied in the rational. I like to see what is the literature of that. So the distinctness of the ethical issues that results from the collection of speech data. This is the ethical issue results from the illocution force than from the illocution content. So maybe, the counter example is making does it make sense to make a promise to a computer, or what if the computer is making the promise? Such kind of things needs to be seen here. It's like explaining the same point. Consider the fourth and fifth illocution. So, a psychologist's state of attitude and the degree of the strength of the attitude of sincere. Now, so when we collect the speech data, wouldn't it be the case that we are also somehow, with the data we are collecting these also, force also, right? Somehow the illocution force clearly, we could say that clearly belongs to the, should it be related to receiver exclusively or not? For me, it's like a speaker. But the receiver also is there.
Yeah, so from my opinion is, well, it's only my opinion, so it's a shared interaction.
Okay.
You cannot think of an interaction without both participants.
Okay.
What about cases where you are recording the experimenter or the researcher gives a data set to the
older ways of data collection where the researcher has a list of sentences to be spoken by the volunteer, and the volunteer speaks whatever is given to him or her. The data is to be collected in that way earlier. In that case, those cases, is there a force? There's only content, right?
So volunteer goes and collects
in such cases of data collection, is there a force?
And I think from the part of speaker, from whom the speech is collected, whatever the expressions or the utterances they have, clearly, I mean, it will come with some force.
That force, yeah, sure, but that is not coming from the speaker. She or she is just reading what has been handed over to her in the form of text.
So,
my opinion is that it needs to be a real interaction, so there needs to be a skin in the game to make it really a force. And so we need both partners, and read statements are not enough. It needs to be an interaction where you actually promise something. So there's the intentional promise.
Both speaker and the receiver.
Yeah, so that's what the speaker has the intentional promise, but then the receiver has some skin in the game to make it.
But
real.
even if there is no intention, there could still be like a threat or a promise. If I say something, and then just say a word. And what if you're threatened by it? Were there a threat?
Yeah, that's a good point. So if there's a threat, you can make a threat without realizing it. So then there's
Yes, so I don't have an intention to threaten you.
Yeah.
But there is a force. The moment you're threatened, there is a force, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's on the receiver, because you can have the force without the intention to have the force.
And that also applies to promise. The receiver can feel it as a promise, even though I didn't say actually it or didn't intend it.
Okay. So clearly the receiver has an off.
Every speech sample has its own landmarks. So we call them as landmarks. So what application we are building? So based on that, those landmarks should be exploited. It is not necessarily always the content or the content force is to be taken into account. It depends on the application, what application I am building. Suppose I am building a speech coding application. So when I am doing that, so this illocutionary force and content doesn't play any role. So the landmarks of the speech are very important. They are the guiding beacons, what the speech says. Everything will be there, but depending on the application, I have to exploit. So not necessarily always I have to look into. It is my personal opinion to look into the left content and force. So what majorly matters is quality of speech and whether it is corrupted by unwanted noise. So suppose if I am doing context-aware speech processing, then all these issues will come into picture, especially for the emotion analysis. Yes, I need all these things. Suppose if I am doing something like speech recognition, then it's not required. Suppose if I am doing speech coding, it is not required. So Based on the application, we have to look into the
Okay.
landmarks of the speech.
So, would this distinction, illocutionary force between these two conduct, would it be relevant in any of this?
I think, yeah, so this illocutionary force, I think, relates to applications where we are interested in the kind of communication content. So when, for example, a voice assistant, when you're trying to make it do something, then it's really important. And if you're doing the data collection, if there are real conversations, then there will be real illocutionary forces between the speakers, and that it becomes an issue, like a privacy issue. And of course, there are lots of other privacy issues as well. So like the illocutionary force, to me, sounds like it only applies to the message part of the communication. I thought more about that tomorrow, but for example, health information is private information, which is completely kind of disconnected, or not completely, but mostly disconnected from the content part. And the health information is then also important information in speech transmission, for example, like coding. It depends.
Depends on the, requirement. Yeah, I think more or less we were discussing about this. So, yeah, so if, I mean, that is taken further, then, yeah, content force distinction, then, yeah, considering the kind of discussions what we had, I think this needs to be revised, I think. But yeah, now one could think of some kind of indeterminacy between the type of data, speech data being collected. So whether it is whether it contains merely the illocutionary conduct or does it contain the illocutionary force. Yeah, so I was of the opinion that this has to be, I mean, this needs to be, I have to explain it, but yeah. Yeah, this is where we reach the main part of the, but there are issues with this, as because the receiver's part is not taken into account. Yes, and yeah. Yes. So, any opinion or question?
Illocutionary content and illocutionary force together will come out as a acoustic signal.
Okay.
In the form of speech.
Acoustic signals.
Signal. So when it is recorded, it becomes electrical signal. So there the illocutionary content and illocutionary force can be identified by consonant to vowel ratio.
Sure.
Because content and force will come together as a acoustic signal. Then acoustic signal is converted into electrical signal. So that electrical signal, if I want to extract the content and the force, then I have to look into the consonant to vowel ratio, then the rate at which the annular decays. So all those things will determine the content and force if my application is based on that.
But is it really possible to separate it out, like force from?
How do you collect the force at all?
No, we are not collecting the force. See, illusionary content and force will be coming out from the speaker as a form of acoustic signal. It's a combined one. It's a one entity. Acoustic signal is the combined entity of content and force. So through the microphone, it will be coming out as an electrical signal, which we are converting into digital. Then it goes to system. So in the system level, if I want to look into the content and force, then I have to look into its landmarks, like what is the envelope, what is the transition of envelope, what is the ratio of vowel and consonant. So all those issues
But
will.
you can't locate the force anywhere, right? You can't literally mark force in any landmarks, right?
No, we can locate. We can locate by locating into the, suppose if the vowel to consonant ratio is more. So if the vowel to consonant ratio is more, so definitely there is a more force. So there is a use of more vowels. That mapping can be done.
And I think that's a pretty simplistic approach to that. So it's probably a very, very complex process. How the force, so of course the force is somewhere in there. It's embedded. So a human who hears that sound can understand what the force was probably. So it is in the sound somehow. Whether it is visible in the phonetic content, I'm a bit doubtful about that. Might be. I have no evidence for or against, but I would suspect that it's a very nuanced interpretation that has to be done, which takes into account also cultural background and like context. Has to understand what the context is, so the history of what was spoken before and what is spoken after. So it will never be a simple mathematical equation.